Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I thought I'd do a little something here, kind of be inspired a little bit by Huey Toomore and what he did about last year. Huey Toomore, I think it was last year or so, did basically, and he had done this year, 2 years before. He had done basically what he considered the top 10 cartoon intros from both the 80s and then later on, like, I think last year or so, the 90s. Now, I'm not here to talk about intros because I don't want to suffer any kind of copyright trouble from YouTube. But thinking about it, I've realized I should give you my top 15 shows that I grew up on and enjoyed and were influential in other areas as well in the past 30 years. Yeah, yeah, 30 years. I could say 36, so I'm going to be 36 years old in the next 4 to 3 weeks on July 25th, but that would be a little cheating. I'm looking more along the lines of 30, 31 years, mostly when I would watch shows like Transformers. And I do apologize for the fan in the background. I'm trying to keep it cool in the room here right now because it's going to get very hot today. So, with that said, what are the top 15 shows? What are my top 15, you might ask? I know a lot of people might have an opinion, and you'll have all the rights to say what you want down there. Well, let's start out with number 15, and I know I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but the number 15 cartoon that I sort of respected and enjoyed somewhat, but do kind of put on the list due to it influencing the fact that if it wasn't for its existence, we wouldn't have shows like, let's say, one that I'm going to talk about later on that I've become a huge fan of. And of course, I'm talking about number 15, and again, I know I might get some flack for this. Again, like I said, I know I might get some flack for this, but at number 15, I give you Pokemon. Now, I've talked about Pokemon already in some of my TV tropes, and I'll probably talk about it again in an upcoming one. Mostly the fact that the whole, well, you just watch the videos just watch the video on the cheating death deal, or the, cheating death fake out deal, if you know what I mean. Check that out, one of the more recent ones. But Pokemon I do put on the list due to the fact that at number 15, it's on the list due to the fact that it is one of the more influential shows ever. And if it wasn't for it, we wouldn't have shows based on other games, card games, or little miniature games based on different mythological creatures or monstrous creatures for that matter. Not to mention the fact that it has had dozens of spin-offs, even to this day. I mean, when this show came out, I think, what was it, 1999, 1998? And it's still going to this day with new shows always happening, it seemingly, along with new movies. It's hard to believe the influence and impact that this show has had. Even to this day, you go into a Walmart, like where I work, and you go into the card section, which is usually either up front, most of the time it's up front, and right behind or near one of the smoking counters, or behind one of the smoking counters, or in some areas is located near the books. And you end up finding so many Pokemon cards, it's not funny. They still have Pokemon figures and stuff like that. It's just unbelievable the influence that this thing has had. This show had, this franchise has had. The anime, like I said, it's spun off so many different spin-offs and so many different movies, it's unnoticeable. It's not unnoticeable. It's not unnoticeable. It's not unnoticeable. I mean, it's like you can't walk into a video store if they're still around. You can't go onto a Netflix. You can't go into a Walmart or Target or anywhere, look in the DVD and Blu-ray sections and not see another Pokemon movie. The point is, when it comes to Pokemon, even though I never really watched the show that much, I mean, I recorded maybe 1 or 2 episodes here and there just to see what it was like, and kind of say, in a sense, that I did kind of watch it and have it, there for historical evidence. and I did watch the first movie, I can say this. I can say this honestly. Even though I may not have been a big fan of it, I know my nephew was. My nephew's in the Navy was. I know my niece was, who's a recent graduate of IOT. So, I can understand the influence they have. But, in all honesty, the only reason it's on the list is because of its influence. Not just on itself, but on others that came after it. Now, number 14. Number 14 on this list might surprise you. It might surprise you. But number 14 on this list is raw tunage. And you might say, well, Brian, raw tunage only lasted one season. True, but it was one of my favorite shows to watch. Even more so when I would watch all the reruns, when I would watch the reruns of the episodes on Toon Disney. The reason being is because it was Disney's answer to NBC's Saturday Night Live. I know that sounds like a strange comparison and a strange answer, but I look at it as being just that. I mean, the fact it had a very similar premise. You had a host, you had a variety of different sketches and skits, sometimes mostly 7 5-minute cartoon shorts. And it also laid the groundwork to introduce us to characters that would go on a year or so later and have their own shows in Bonkers and in Masupalami. Masupalami basically keeping the same premise as Raw Tunage, I think, at times, especially when it came to Toon Disney. But yeah, it was that. But yeah, Raw Tunage was that good. Now, true, it doesn't crack the top 10. But being at number 14 isn't bad because of the fact that, like I said, it laid the groundwork for laid the groundwork and introduced us to characters that were going to have their own shows down the line. I mean, Bonkers went on to have a show on Disney Afternoon. Masupalami remained on CBS. What more can you say? And the use of characters, of guest characters and all that throughout it, host characters, if you will, characters that were on the show, like Jitters, Bonkers, Masupalami himself. That was great. That was just great because you sort of got a mini story. You sort of got like a mini story right there with those host characters. I mean, you had Scrooge McDuck in there hosting. You had Goslin along with Ludwig von Drake. You had Ludwig von Drake on his own. You had Launchpad in there. You had Don Carnage. And I think the list could go on. I think you had Goofy maybe. I'm not really sure. But again, like I said, you had Bonkers himself, along with Fawn. But it shows you how diverse of a variety that the show had. I mean, it even referenced other shows. I mean, when they had Jitters hosting an episode of Raw Tunage, they had him hosting it as a stuntman, kind of teaching how to do stunt work. And they referenced all sorts of shows that were on the air at the time. Rescue Rangers, they referenced. Tailspin, Little Mermaid. I mean, the list goes on. They even had a Captain Hook of Peter Pan dueling it out with Don Carnage, only on Raw Tunage. And that is why it's at number 14, because of its diverse variety, because of the diverse variety it had, and the fact that it laid the groundwork for characters it introduced us to more so than, let's say, a theatrical short did, and gave us an idea of what to expect later on from those said characters. Now, number 13. Number 13 might surprise you. Number 13 is Wildcats. Now you might say, what's Wildcats? Wildcats was basically based on a comic book series done by Jim Lee. And this was all part of CBS's Action Zone block. An hour-and-a-half block, or mostly sometimes basically a 2 hour to mostly hour-and-a-half block of action-packed shows. And Wildcats was one of the newest shows to be part of that. Unfortunately, like Skeleton Warriors, which was also introduced at the same time, Wildcats only lasted one season. Now, I think the reason being is because perhaps of the fact that it was a little too dark and a little too complex for kids to understand. And mostly the comic book it was based on had to basically be rewritten for its television adaptation. Some of the backgrounds and origins of the characters had to be rewritten for the adaptation. But still, it was a good show. It was really good. I mean, the animation was top notch, the voice acting just tremendous. Now, true, there were some animation errors at times, especially towards the final episode, which was in two parts. But to me, when I look at Wildcats, it's one of those shows that really just grabbed your attention and made you a fan of the franchise and the comic book, even if you weren't before. Even if you didn't know who these characters were in the first place, this made you a fan. This made you a fan. And I remember reading the CBS Action Zone comic book tie-in they had, which had a Wildcats short in it, a short Wildcats comic, and I was hooked. And I've tried my best to collect as many Wildcat comic books as I can. Because quite frankly, this was one of the better shows I'd ever seen on Saturday mornings. One of the better shows. And I don't think anybody could say otherwise. And that's why Wildcats is at number 13. Now, number 12 might really surprise you too. Number 12 would be Denver the Last Dinosaur from 1988. That's right, 1988. I told you this was going to be about 30 years. And I remember watching Denver the Last Dinosaur. I remember the advertisements for it on KBHK, which is now KBCW. And I remember watching it when it came out and enjoying it. Now, did I watch every episode? I can't really say. But I'm sure I did. But I know I watched. I did watch enough of it. That was the case. I did watch enough of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the intro. That got me hooked. And the characters were fun. They were fun. They had great interaction. It was just a tremendous effort. It was just tremendous effort put into this show. And when you consider that it was basically one of the first educational shows before the E/I rating came into being. And that's what made it cool. It was an educated show. It was an educational show, but with the educational tones, with the education, I should say, toned down very significantly. So to me, Denver the Last Dinosaur was one of the best shows I had seen back when I was a kid. And I was 9 years old when this thing came out. And I am determined to get the complete DVD set. But to me, Denver the Last Dinosaur is one of those shows that if you've not seen it, I'm sure there's some episodes on YouTube and elsewhere, check the show out. You are not going to regret it. You're not going to regret it. Now at number 11, this might be something that will shock you all. I talked about it in a two-part audio video saying how underrated it was. And of course, I'm talking about the last of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons that featured the famous characters as teenagers. That's right, I'm talking about Yo Yogi. And I remember watching this show on NBC, and I can tell you something. I can understand how some people feel about it being not the best show around, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, it was about 1990, 91, and yeah, I was about maybe 11, 12 years old. But I still love Saturday morning cartoons. And personally, with my family, going through all the movings that we did at times, being able to wake up a Saturday morning in a house no matter where you lived, and be able to watch Saturday morning cartoons on all three networks, that was saying something. And Yo Yogi was one of those last vestiges, if you will. Well, yeah, I think that's the word people use. One of the last vestiges of a bygone era for NBC Saturday mornings, because they were slowly transitioning over to teen being. They were slowly transitioning to being TNBC, Teen NBC, turn the Saturday mornings into shows for teenagers or preteens at that, if you want to look at it that. But I liked it. I actually got a kick out of it. I really did. I think I can remember a few times begging my parents, maybe once or twice, to get the Kellogg stuff. I think because those were the cereals I think that had them, that supplied the 3D glasses for you to get. And I wanted to get them just to watch Yo Yogi, especially the 3D scenes. But that never happened. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was really fun. I mean, just to see. I mean, especially looking back on it now, to see all the characters as teenagers interacting in basically a modernized 90s version of Jellystone Park, this time known as Jellystone Mall. It was really fun. It was really fun. I like the fact that they also had some of the other established characters, not just as teenagers, but as grown-ups, and had them portrayed as parodies of celebrities and stuff. It was really fun, and that's why when I did that audio video on it, I felt it was underrated. But yeah, Yo Yogi is a show that if you don't listen to what some of the negative responses are, and if you sit down and you watch it, you'll enjoy what you see. Because it's not as bad as people think it is. It's pretty good, and it's worth a watch. Trust me on that. And that's why Yo Yogi is at number 11. Now we're going to hit the top 10. What could start us off in the top 10? What could be a show in the top 10 that would really, really be worth stepping something there? But really be worth looking at. What could be? What could be? Oh, I know. I don't know if you can see this very well with the lighting, but at number 10, we have the 1986 series My Little Pony. The original, the one that started it all. And the reason I say this is probably the most influential, well, not influential, but the reason I say that this is in the top 10, at least cracks the top 10 and starts it off, is due to the fact that it had such a lasting impact. It was a show that even Buzz Dixon said was sort of in the same area as G.I. Joe and Transformers when it came to some of the complexity involved. It was also a show that even young boys at that time, when you talk about boys and men and boys now being fans of Friendship is Magic, nothing compared to this. Nothing. And I'll tell you why. Because this was, in a sense, a lot darker than what you're seeing with Friendship and Magic right now. I'm not saying that will never get dark. It's proven that. But the original My Little Pony had such an influence and impact that people still watch it to this day. Especially if they could see it through some kind of streaming service, or if they have the complete series like I do. You know, and when you think about it, the original My Little Pony series, if it wasn't for its existence, you wouldn't have right now Friendship is Magic, which is the phenomenon that it is.